Hello, welcome to my website, Secular Faith. I'm Andrea Parliament, and I wanted to introduce myself and some of the motivations that I have for being passionate about the topics that I write about. I was very much motivated by the events of 9/11. I was very concerned that there was such animosity towards the secular concepts in the West. I was then further upset by some of the reactions in America in terms of the increasing use of religion in the public sphere. At the time, I was very much a devoted secularist and saw these things as signs of regression. I then became concerned about my own level of cynicism when I realized that I didn't really have a very effective rebuttal to people who had religious views, and that I was contradicting my own values of tolerance by becoming increasingly intolerant. And I could see how things could escalate out of control to the point where you have the new atheists being just as dogmatic in their rejection of religion as you had the old school absolute monotheists of the Catholic Church in the days of Galileo. So I do what I do when I get distressed, and I felt groundless. I felt like the old assumptions that were there that helped me feel like we were making progress and that life was going to get increasingly better seemed to be disappearing and crumbling around me. So I dived into all sorts of reading, and especially on religion, and there's been, of course, an explosion of the types of books. I've greatly benefited from all of that work, and I wanted to share with you some of that. I've done so much reading, I thought I could synthesize it and help people go along the way in that journey, those who wish to come along. The result is that I've actually created a few new words, and I certainly have a new way of looking at things, and I want to encourage you to sort of make your way through it, because oftentimes I'm going to go through an analysis and I'm headed in one direction, and you're going to be then surprised that I take a 180. So I do have sort of jagged political views that transcend across the wall of separation, if you will. I want to quickly just go over a few authors who've been key and influential in my ideas so that you can have an understanding of where I'm coming from, as well as I encourage you to read firsthand their works. So very quickly, John Ralston Saul, The Unconscious Civilization, fabulous book for showing us the shortcomings of rational systems and perhaps why there might be a religious resurgence because we're not able to appreciate and get beyond some of our own limitations here. Written in 1995, still a fabulous book. Loved the idea of an unconscious civilization because consciousness is being fully aware of all of our choices. And while there's a lot of bad news in the book, the good news is that there's choices that are out there that we're not aware of. And the clues that I found in terms of where to look for those hidden choices actually very much comes from the work of another Canadian literary critic named Northrop Frye. Northrop Frye passed away, I think it was in 1992, and he has done some phenomenal work, completed a lot of great books. The Great Code, Words with Power, The Secular Scripture. I rely heavily on his understanding of myth and language and how some of our hidden potential as a species comes from our ability to understand myth and how that as a type of language is different, and how perhaps by being hyper-rational in many ways we've lost some of the wisdom in our religious myths. Another key author for me, one who inspires me both in content as well as in style and in motivation, is Harvey Cox. This book is so beaten up because it's traveled with me on many commutes into the city, the secular city. And in the secular city, Harvey Cox identified and said that secularization is actually quite consistent with the Judeo-Christian concepts, and I found that to be terribly encouraging, and he encouraged the American population in the 1960s to full-heartedly embrace secularization as the manifestation of Judeo-Christian values. And that was the first book that got me to think that this isn't just a fight between two irreconcilable ways of looking at life. And so really got me to look beyond the wall of separation and to look for means by which we can manage our differences more constructively. So he's also written more recently, The Future of Faith, fabulous books, really enjoy him. Consistent with the idea of Northrop Frye, Robert Nisbet, I think this book is 1969, Social Change in History, and he talks about the role again of metaphor and how we use metaphors to understand history and how we go, what change is possible. And he talked about, most importantly, the abuses of metaphor, and that really got me thinking and made me realize as well that how religious myth and how reason take a look at time and how their different concepts of time contribute to some of our different moral differences. Loved that book. I did a lot of research, being a lawyer, of course, and being interested in the constitutional nature of our different secular constitutions. I dived into the history of John Locke, his views, the works of Rousseau, Voltaire, definitely did a lot of work around the Founding Fathers. This was a great book, Religion and the New Republic, Faith in the Founding of America by James Hudson, and a wonderful book of primary sources on the views of the Founding Fathers and how they put together and reconciled this difference between reason and religion. So those are the primary influences on my thinking, and I wanted to both give the authors their due as well as encourage you to look at those resources as primary sources. And in the same vein, I'd like to offer to you an invitation to respond to my views, and I appreciate both your rants and your raves. I actually much prefer your rants to your raves because it's an opportunity for me to learn something new. Usually that's where passion is, and where there's passion, there's a truth that needs to be expressed, and I would love to learn more about that. So I encourage you to take up these works and try to look beyond the wall of separation. Let's look to our similarities. I think I, for one, have had enough of postmodern secularism's differences and focusing on our differences and even celebrating our differences. I'd like to turn this around into celebrating our similarities and starting to be able to move on to tackle what I consider to be the very serious social issues that just are not getting anywhere near top billing that they deserve, and those are environmental concerns and global warming. Bioethics is another area that needs some desperate attention and a coordinated global response. And until we start to be able to look at a post-secular moral code, we can't get at those really critical issues, and time just keeps marching on. So that's my sense of urgency and how I have coped with the insecurities that have come with understanding that we have sort of left the secular age behind us. So thanks very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of the website. I'll talk to you soon.